A black mechanic fixes a Hell's Angels bike and gets fired. What happens next will shock everyone. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The sound of a Harley-Davidson engine coughing and choking echoed through the open bay doors of Callaway Auto Repair just after 8 in the morning. Every wrench in the shop seemed to pause midair. The deep rumble that should have shaken the concrete floor had turned into a sick, uneven sputter. Marcus Reed did not look up right away. He kept his hands steady inside the open hood of a Ford F-150, listening the way a musician listens for a wrong note in an orchestra. Outside, the motorcycle rolled in slow and heavy, chrome dulled by road dust, black leather saddlebags worn from miles of hard riding. The rider killed the engine, and silence dropped over the shop like a heavy curtain. The patch on his back read Hell's Angels in bold white letters arched over a winged skull. Some of the younger mechanics stepped back without even realizing they had moved. Dean Calloway wiped his hands on a red shop rag and forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Morning," he said, voice tight. "What seems to be the trouble?" The biker did not answer right away. He removed his helmet slowly, revealing steel gray hair pulled back into a low tie and a face lined by wind and years on the road. "My name is Ryder Cole," he said finally. "Bike has been cutting out at 60 miles per hour. Already had 2 shops look at it. Nobody fixed it." His eyes scanned the garage and landed briefly on Marcus, who was now closing the hood of the truck and walking over, calm and unhurried. The other mechanics avoided eye contact, but Marcus stepped forward. He was 38 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, hand-scarred from 15 years of turning wrenches. His dark skin was streaked with oil, and his expression was thoughtful rather than intimidated. "Mind if I take a listen?" he asked. Dean hesitated for half a second too long. "I have got it," he said quickly, but Ryder's gaze stayed on Marcus. "Let him try." Marcus crouched beside the Harley and rested his palm lightly against the fuel tank as if greeting an old friend. He did not rush. He listened. The faint ticking of cooling metal, the subtle scent of unburned fuel, the memory of the engine's uneven rhythm still hanging in the air. Around him, the shop felt tight, charged. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew this was not just about a motorcycle. It was about pride, reputation, and whether a man who had spent 10 years being overlooked would finally be seen. Marcus did not speak for nearly a full minute. He reached for a clean rag and wiped a thin layer of dust from the engine casing, exposing the subtle hairline cracks near the intake manifold. He turned the ignition halfway and listened again as Ryder thumbed the starter. The engine roared, then stumbled, then steadied into a rough idle that vibrated through the concrete floor. Most people heard noise. Marcus heard patterns. He tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing, as if the machine itself were whispering a confession only he could understand. Dean folded his arms across his chest. "We already checked the fuel pump," he said quickly. "And the plugs. It is probably a bad sensor. We can order parts." Ryder did not look at Dean. He watched Marcus instead. "What do you think?" Marcus stood slowly, wiping his hands again, buying himself a few seconds to organize the answer forming in his mind. "It is not the fuel pump," he said calmly. "And it is not the plugs. When it cuts out at 60 miles per hour, that tells me it is choking under load. Feels like restricted airflow, maybe a micro crack in the intake or a vacuum leak that only opens when the engine heats up and expands." Dean scoffed softly. "That is a stretch." Marcus ignored him. He reached for a small inspection mirror and angled it carefully under the manifold. "There." He tapped the metal gently with the tip of his screwdriver. "Tiny fracture line. When the metal heats up, it widens just enough to throw off the air-fuel mixture. Engine thinks it is getting more air than it is. Computer overcorrects. That is your stumble." Ryder stepped closer, boots heavy against the floor. "You sure?" Marcus met his eyes without flinching. "I would bet my paycheck on it." Dean let out a short laugh. "That is bold for a guess." "It is not a guess," Marcus replied quietly. "Give me 45 minutes. I can seal it temporarily and test ride it. If I am wrong, I will say so." The tension in the room thickened. Ryder studied Marcus for a long moment, then nodded once. Do it. Dean opened his mouth to object, then thought better of it. Fine. But if anything else goes wrong, that is on you. Marcus moved with focused efficiency. He removed the intake assembly, cleaned the fractured area carefully, and applied a high-temperature sealant designed for performance engines. His hands were steady, precise, almost gentle. Around him, the other mechanics pretended to return to their work, but their eyes drifted back again and again. They had seen Marcus solve problems before. They had also seen credit go elsewhere. When the parts were back in place, Marcus nodded to Ryder. Fire it up. The Harley roared to life, deeper this time, smoother. Marcus listened, then gestured toward the open street beyond the bay doors. Take it out. Hit 60. Bring it back. The motorcycle rolled away in a burst of thunder. The shop fell silent again. Dean stared at Marcus with an expression that was difficult to read, something tight and calculating behind his forced calm. 10 minutes later, the Harley returned, engine rumbling like distant storm clouds instead of choking static. Ryder shut it down and removed his helmet slowly. His eyes locked onto Marcus. Smooth all the way through 70 miles per hour, he said. Not a hiccup. A faint smile touched Marcus's face, but he kept it small. That seal will hold for now, he said. Long term, you will want to replace the manifold entirely. Ryder reached into his vest and pulled out a thick roll of bills, peeling several off and handing them directly to Marcus instead of Dean. For knowing your craft. For listening. Dean stepped forward quickly. Payment goes through the shop. Ryder did not move his hand. I am paying the man who fixed my bike. The air shifted again, subtle but undeniable. And in his eyes, something darker began to burn. The bills remained suspended between Ryder and Marcus for a heartbeat longer than felt comfortable. Finally Marcus accepted the cash, not with arrogance, but with quiet dignity, folding it once and slipping it into the breast pocket of his work shirt. He did not gloat. He did not even smile. He simply nodded and said, "Thank you. I appreciate that." Dean forced a tight chuckle and clapped his hands together once. All right, show is over. We have got work to do. Ryder studied the exchange with the calm of a man who missed very little. He stepped closer to Marcus, lowering his voice just enough that only the three of them could hear. You ever think about opening your own place? Marcus hesitated. Every mechanic thinks about it, he answered honestly. But thinking and doing are two different things. Takes capital. Takes connections. Takes more than skill. Ryder nodded slowly, as if filing that information away for later. Skill is the part most men never get. He extended his hand. Marcus shook it firmly. I ride with the coastal chapter, Ryder said. We take care of the people who take care of us. Remember that. With that, he secured his helmet, swung his leg over the Harley, and let the engine roll into a steady, confident rumble. This time, the sound did not cough or hesitate. It vibrated strong and clean as he pulled out into traffic and disappeared down the road. The shop remained quiet even after the noise faded. One of the younger mechanics let out a low whistle. Man, that was something. Dean shot him a look that shut him up instantly. Marcus returned to his bay without comment, but he could feel the shift in the air. It was subtle, like a change in barometric pressure before a storm. For years he had fixed the hardest problems that rolled through those doors. Transmission rebuilds. Electrical nightmares. Engines that other shops had given up on. Customers often thanked Dean for the miracle, and Dean had never corrected them. Marcus had learned to live with that. He had a wife at home, a small rented house on the east side of town, and a 12-year-old son who believed his father could fix anything. That belief mattered more than recognition from a man who signed his paychecks. Still, as he tightened the bolts on the Ford in front of him, he could not ignore the weight in his chest. For the first time in a long while, someone with influence had seen him, had named his skill out loud. That kind of visibility could be a blessing, or it could be a threat. Near closing time, Dean walked over and leaned against Marcus's tool chest. We need to talk, he said flatly. Marcus wiped his hands slowly and met his boss's gaze. About what? Dean exhaled through his nose. You made me look small today. That little performance with the biker. Marcus blinked once, confused. I fixed his motorcycle. That is my job. Your job is to work here, Dean snapped. Under my name. My reputation. When customers start thinking the shop runs because of you, that becomes a problem. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him, though his face remained calm. I never asked for credit, he said quietly. Credit found you anyway, Dean replied. And around here, That kind of attention can cost more than you think. Marcus held Dean his gaze without blinking. Around them, the fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting long shadows across the oil-stained concrete. The rest of the crew pretended to focus on closing duties, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. I did not ask him to hand me the money, Marcus said evenly. He chose to. Dean pushed off the tool chest and stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think I do not see what is happening? You get a biker like that talking your name, and suddenly you are the hero of the shop. That kind of spotlight attracts attention we do not need. Marcus felt a slow heat rise in his chest, but he kept his tone measured. I fixed a machine. That is all. No spotlight. No speech. Just work. Dean let out a short breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but carried no humor. You always do this. You play quiet. Like you do not know exactly what you are doing. Marcus frowned slightly. What do you think I am doing? Dean glanced toward the open bay doors, as if making sure no customers lingered nearby. Building your own reputation under my roof. Customers ask for you by name. Now bikers are shaking your hand like you own the place. That is not how this shop runs. The words settled heavy between them. Marcus thought back over the last 10 years. The late nights staying to finish jobs on time. The weekends he came in unpaid to redo repairs that someone else had rushed. The times Dean had promised a raise that never materialized. If customers ask for me, it is because I treat them right and fix what is broken, Marcus said quietly. That helps the shop. Dean, his jaw tightened. It helps you. And I will not have this place turning into some kind of show where you are the main act. The accusation stung more than Marcus expected. He had spent years shrinking himself to avoid exactly this reaction. Taking credit felt dangerous. Standing out felt risky. He thought of his son Caleb, who loved to sit at the kitchen table and listen to stories about engines and gears, who told his friends that his dad was the best mechanic in the city. Marcus had always told the boy that skill speaks for itself. But skill, he was realizing, could also threaten the wrong people. What are you saying, Dean? Dean straightened and crossed his arms. I am saying the shop needs unity. No one man bigger than the name on the sign. And today, you crossed that line. Marcus felt something inside him harden. I did not cross any line. I solved a problem. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe the problem is not me. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. One of the younger mechanics dropped a wrench somewhere in the back, the metal clang echoing through the bay. Dean looked at Marcus for a long moment, eyes cold and calculating. You know what? He said finally. Maybe you are right. Maybe the problem is not you. Maybe it is the fit. He walked toward the office without another word, leaving Marcus standing beside his tool chest, the weight of what was coming pressing down like thick summer humidity before a storm. Marcus did not sleep much that night. The air inside the small house on the east side felt heavier than usual, thick with unspoken thoughts. After leaving the shop, he had driven home in silence, hands steady on the steering wheel, but mind replaying every word Dean had said. The house smelled of garlic and onions when he walked in. The familiar comfort of Linda cooking dinner grounding him for a moment. She looked up from the stove, reading his face the way only someone who had loved him for 15 years could. What happened? She asked gently. Marcus forced a small smile. Long day. That was all he offered while their 12-year-old son Caleb sat at the kitchen table, finishing his homework. Caleb looked up, eyes bright. Dad, did you fix that loud motorcycle today? The one with the skull on the back. Marcus paused, then nodded. Yeah, got it running smooth. Caleb grinned wide. I told you. Nobody fixes engines like you. You should have your own shop one day. Marcus felt the words land deeper than the boy intended. Linda noticed. After Caleb went to his room, she sat across from Marcus at the kitchen table. You were carrying something, she said softly. He told her everything. The confrontation. The accusation. The way Dean had looked at him like he was a threat instead of an asset. Linda listened without interrupting. When he finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. You have been loyal to that place for 10 years, she said. You train their new hires. You fix their worst jobs. You stay late without complaining. If they cannot see your value, that is on them. Marcus rubbed his palms together slowly. It is not that simple. We have bills. Rent. Health insurance. I cannot just walk away. Linda reached across the table and took his hand. I am not saying you walk away. I am saying do not shrink to make someone else comfortable. You deserve to be seen. Her words echoed in his mind long after they turned out the lights. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the shop early as usual. The sky was still pale gray, dew clinging to the parked cars outside. He unlocked his toolbox and began organizing his wrenches with quiet precision, as if routine could steady the unease in his chest. Dean arrived 20 minutes later. He did not greet Marcus. He went straight into the office and shut the door. An hour passed, then two. Around mid-morning, Dean stepped out holding a thin manila envelope. Marcus knew what that envelope meant before a single word was spoken. Dean walked across the shop floor slowly, every step deliberate. "I have been thinking," he said flatly, "about fit, about what this shop needs moving forward." Marcus stood straight, shoulders squared but expression calm. "And," Dean extended the envelope, "we are going in a different direction. Today will be your last day." The words were delivered without anger, without shouting. That almost made them worse. Marcus accepted the envelope, feeling the light weight of final pay inside. No warning. No write-up. Just an ending. "Is this about yesterday?" he asked quietly. Dean met his eyes without flinching. "It is about what is best for the business." Marcus nodded once. Around them, the other mechanics stood frozen, pretending not to listen. 10 years reduced to a thin envelope and a polite dismissal. Marcus removed his name patch from his work shirt slowly, folded it, and placed it inside his pocket. He did not argue. He did not beg. He simply gathered his tools, one careful motion at a time, unaware that the story of that motorcycle was far from over. The sound of metal drawers sliding shut echoed through the garage as Marcus packed the last of his tools into 2 worn red toolboxes. He moved slowly, not because he needed to, but because 10 years of habit do not disappear in a single morning. Every wrench had its place. Every socket had a memory attached to it. Around him, the shop felt unfamiliar already, like a house after the furniture has been removed. A few of the younger mechanics avoided his eyes. One of them, a kid barely 20 years old, stepped forward halfway and then stopped. "I am sorry, man," he muttered under his breath. Marcus gave him a small nod. "Learn everything you can," he said quietly. "That is the only thing nobody can take from you." He carried the first toolbox out to his truck, an aging Chevrolet Silverado with 200,000 miles on it, and a tailgate dented from years of hauling engines. As he set the weight down in the bed, he noticed the low rumble of a familiar motorcycle engine approaching from down the street. It was steady, confident, not coughing anymore. Ryder Cole rolled into the parking lot of Callaway Auto Repair just as Marcus returned for the second toolbox. The Harley came to a stop near the open bay doors, and Ryder removed his helmet slowly, scanning the scene. He saw the empty space where Marcus usually stood. He saw the toolboxes. He saw the look on Marcus's face. Something shifted in his expression, subtle but sharp. "You quitting?" he asked evenly. Marcus shook his head once. "No. Let go." Ryder glanced toward the office where Dean stood behind the glass, watching but not stepping outside. "For what?" Marcus hesitated only a fraction of a second. "Fit," he said. Ryder let out a low breath that carried no humor. "That's so." He dismounted and walked toward the office without asking permission. The shop grew still again. Marcus did not follow. He did not need to hear the conversation to know it would not be gentle. Through the thin glass, he could see Ryder standing tall, speaking in a calm, measured tone, while Dean shifted uncomfortably from one foot to the other. No shouting. No wild gestures. Just quiet intensity. A few minutes later, Ryder stepped back out. He did not look angry. He looked decided. "You got somewhere to take those tools?" he asked Marcus. Marcus shrugged lightly. "Home for now. I will figure the rest out." Ryder studied him for a long moment, as if weighing something invisible. "I asked around after I left yesterday," he said. "About you. Word travels fast. You are the one people trust when things get complicated." Marcus gave a faint smile that did not reach his eyes. "Trust does not pay rent." "Maybe not," Ryder replied. "But reputation does." He reached into his vest and pulled out a small card, plain white with a name and number printed in black. "I own a warehouse space about 15 miles north of here. Used to be a machine shop. Been sitting empty. I do not like wasted space." Marcus looked at the card but did not take it yet. "Why are you telling me this?" Ryder held his gaze steady. "Because sometimes a man does not get fired. Sometimes he gets freed. And what happens next depends on whether he is brave enough to see it that way." Marcus looked down at the small white card in Ryder's hand, then finally reached out and took it. The paper felt light, almost insignificant, yet it carried more weight than the envelope Dean had handed him an hour earlier. 15 miles north, Ryder had said. An empty warehouse. A machine shop that once had life inside it. Marcus nodded slowly. I appreciate the offer, he said carefully. But I do not want charity. Ryder did not flinch. Good. I do not offer charity. I offer opportunity. There is a difference. The two men stood facing each other in the parking lot. Morning sun climbing higher, heat beginning to shimmer above the asphalt. Inside the shop, Dean remained behind the office window, watching like a man trying to calculate risk. What would it take? Marcus asked finally. Ryder rested his hands on his hips. It would take you walking through that door and seeing what is possible instead of what you lost. It would take you believing your skill is worth building on. And it would take work. A lot of it. Marcus let out a quiet breath. Work has never scared me. Good, Ryder replied. Because building something from nothing never comes easy. I can cover the lease for 6 months. After that, it is yours to run or lose. We set it up right. I bring the chapter in. You will not be short on engines to fix. The offer hung in the air between them. 6 months. Enough time to stand up or fall flat. Marcus glanced at his truck, at the toolboxes in the bed. 10 years in one place. Zero security now. He thought about Linda. About Caleb sitting at the kitchen table talking about owning a shop one day. He thought about shrinking to survive versus stepping forward to build. Why me? Marcus asked quietly. Ryder answered without hesitation. Because when you fixed my bike, you did not look at the patch on my back. You listened to the machine. That tells me who you are. A man who respects the work, not the noise around it. Marcus felt something steady inside him, something that had been pressed down for years beginning to rise. When do you want me to see this place? He asked. Ryder allowed himself a small nod. Now. I will ride ahead. Follow me. 15 miles is not far, but sometimes it is far enough to change a life. Marcus closed the tailgate of his truck and climbed into the driver's seat. As he started the engine, he glanced once more at the shop where he had spent a decade. Dean stood in the doorway now, arms crossed, expression unreadable. There was no apology in his eyes, only calculation. Marcus did not wave. He pulled out of the lot behind Ryder his Harley, the steady rumble guiding him north toward an industrial strip he had passed 100 times without noticing. The road stretched ahead beneath a brightening sky, and for the first time since the envelope had touched his hands, Marcus did not feel dismissed. He felt unsettled, yes, uncertain, but beneath that uncertainty was something stronger. Possibility. The industrial strip north of town looked forgotten at first glance, a stretch of low brick buildings with faded signs and wide metal doors that had not been painted in years. Ryder slowed his Harley and turned into a cracked asphalt lot bordered by a chain-link fence. Marcus followed, easing his truck in beside the motorcycle. The building in front of them was larger than he expected, nearly 5,000 square feet by the look of it, with tall roll-up bay doors and narrow windows set high along the walls. The old sign above the entrance still read Riverside Machine Works, though the letters were peeling and sun-bleached. Ryder cut his engine and stepped off the bike. This used to run 24 hours a day back in the 90s, he said. Fabrication, precision parts, custom work. Owner retired. Kids did not want it. Been empty for almost 3 years. Marcus climbed out of his truck slowly, eyes scanning the structure the way he would scan a damaged engine. He noticed the thickness of the concrete slab, the width of the bays, the reinforced steel beams overhead. Not glamorous, but solid. Ryder unlocked a heavy padlock and pulled one of the roll-up doors halfway open. Dust drifted in the shafts of sunlight that poured inside. The smell of old oil and metal lingered in the air, familiar and strangely comforting. Marcus stepped over the threshold and paused. The space was cavernous compared to the cramped bays at Callaway Auto Repair. Old workbenches lined one wall. A large industrial compressor sat silent in the corner. The electrical panels looked intact. It needs cleaning, Marcus said quietly. And wiring checked. Ryder nodded. Already had an electrician inspect it last year. Panel is good. Needs fixtures and fresh bulbs. Roof was resealed 2 summers ago. Structurally sound. Marcus walked deeper into the space, boots echoing against the concrete. He could see it in layers. 3 bays along the front for quick service. A lift installed near the center. A small office built out in the back corner with glass walls so he could see the shop floor at all times. He did not say any of that out loud, but Ryder watched his eyes move and understood. You are already laying it out in your head, Ryder said. Marcus stopped and gave a small half-smile. Hard not to. Ryder leaned against one of the old benches. 6 months. I cover rent and utilities while you build. After that, you take over payments. I do not want ownership. I want quality work for my people and a fair partner. Marcus turned slowly, measuring the man in front of him. Why help me, really? Ryder did not hesitate. Because I have seen what happens when good men are pushed aside for small reasons. I do not respect small reasons. And because when my chapter rolls in somewhere, I want them walking into a place run by someone who earned it. Silence settled between them, but it was different from the silence at the old shop. This one felt open. Marcus ran his hand along a dusty workbench, leaving a clean streak behind. For the first time since the envelope had been placed in his palm, the future did not look like a closed door. It looked like an empty room waiting to be filled. Marcus stood in the center of the empty warehouse long after Ryder finished speaking. The dust and the sunlight felt almost sacred, like something waiting for purpose. He walked slowly toward the back wall where an old metal desk still sat crooked against peeling paint. He could already picture a clean surface there, invoices stacked neatly, a small sign on the wall with his name printed clearly, not hidden under someone else's logo. His name. Ryder watched him without rushing the moment. I am not asking for an answer this second, he said, but I am not the patient type either. Opportunity does not sit around forever. Marcus let out a slow breath and finally turned. I will need to talk to my wife. Ryder nodded once. Good. Make decisions with the people who stand beside you, not the ones who stand over you. Marcus gave a faint smile at that. By late afternoon, he was back home, standing in the doorway of his kitchen again, but this time, with something different in his posture. Linda noticed it immediately. You saw it, she said before he could even speak. Marcus set the small white card on the table and told her everything about the warehouse. The size, the structure, the 6 months covered, the risk. Caleb sat nearby pretending to read, but listening carefully. That sounds like your own shop, Caleb said softly. Not yet, Marcus replied. Just a chance at one. Linda studied him closely. Are you afraid of failing, or afraid of finally being seen? The question landed deep. Marcus did not answer right away. For years he had told himself stability was enough. A steady paycheck, predictable hours. But stability had just vanished with a thin envelope. What if it does not work? He asked quietly. Then we adjust, Linda replied. We cut back. We hustle. But at least you will be building something that belongs to you. That night Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing not the echo of Dina's voice, but the steady rumble of Ryder his motorcycle and the quiet confidence in his words. Sometimes a man does not get fired. Sometimes he gets freed. By morning, the answer felt clear. He drove back to the warehouse just after sunrise. Ryder was already there, leaning against his Harley with a thermos of black coffee in hand. I was hoping you would show up early, Ryder said. Marcus stepped forward and extended his hand. I am in. But if I do this, I do it right. Clean books. Fair pricing. No cutting corners. Ryder shook his hand firmly. That is exactly why I offered it to you. The two men walked inside together. The space no longer felt empty. It felt like the beginning of something that would test every ounce of Marcus, his skill and resolve. Outside, traffic moved along the highway as it always had, unaware that 15 miles north of Callaway Auto Repair, a new foundation was being laid. And across town, Dean was about to learn that pushing a man out does not always make him disappear. Sometimes it sends him somewhere stronger. The first week inside the warehouse felt less like a business venture and more like controlled demolition of the past. Marcus arrived before sunrise every morning, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a notepad in the other. He began by sweeping years of dust and debris from the concrete floor, each pass of the broom revealing a little more solid ground beneath. Caleb insisted on helping after school, dragging flattened boxes toward the dumpster while Linda wiped down old shelving with steady determination. Ryder kept his distance but showed up when heavy lifting was required, hauling out rusted equipment that had long outlived its purpose. There was no ribbon cutting, no announcement, only work. By the end of the first week, the space felt different. Clean, open, ready. Marcus installed 2 hydraulic lifts purchased at a discount from a closing dealership nearly 40 miles away. He rewired overhead lighting so the shop floor glowed bright and even, no shadows hiding loose bolts or missed details. A modest sign was ordered and mounted above the entrance. Read Performance Garage. The letters were simple and bold, painted black against a clean white background. No flashing lights. No gimmicks. Just a name that had finally stepped into daylight. Ryder kept his word. On the first Monday after the sign went up, 3 motorcycles rolled into the lot just after 9 in the morning. All from the coastal chapter. No revving theatrics. No intimidation. They parked quietly and waited. Marcus wiped his hands on a clean cloth and walked out to greet them. Word travels fast, one of the riders said. Heard you are the man who listens to engines. Marcus nodded. I listen. Then I fix. By noon, 5 more bikes had arrived. By closing time, the appointment book Linda had set up on the small office desk already had names written across 3 full pages. Oil changes. Carburetor adjustments. Electrical diagnostics. Nothing flashy. Just steady, honest work. Across town, at Callaway Auto Repair, Dean stood near the open bay doors watching an empty driveway for longer than he cared to admit. Mondays were usually strong. Loyal customers returning. Routine maintenance. That morning had been slow. A few calls canceled. One regular mention trying a new place north of town. Dean dismissed it at first. New shops pop up all the time. They fade just as fast. But by midweek, the pattern became harder to ignore. 2 longtime clients picked up their vehicles without scheduling follow-ups. A third asked pointed questions about technician turnover. Dean answered tightly, irritation simmering just beneath the surface. Back at Reed Performance Garage, Marcus moved between lifts with focused calm. He charged fair rates. He explained repairs clearly. He showed customers the worn parts he replaced instead of hiding them in a bin. The work spoke for itself. On Friday afternoon, Ryder returned, parking near the entrance and surveying the steady rhythm inside. Not bad for a week, he said. Marcus looked up from beneath a lifted Road King and allowed himself a rare full smile. It is just the beginning. Outside, the sound of another motorcycle approached from the highway. The rumble was familiar, smooth, confident. And this time, it was not just one. It was many. The rumble grew louder until the windows of Reed Performance Garage vibrated lightly in their frames. Marcus slid out from beneath the lifted Road King and wiped his hands, stepping toward the open bay doors. 1 motorcycle became 3. 3 became 6. Within moments, a full line of riders rolled into the lot in disciplined formation, engines synchronized like distant thunder moving across open plains. At the front rode Ryder Cole, his posture steady, his expression unreadable beneath the afternoon sun. Behind him, patches marked different ranks and years of service, but every engine idled with the same calm respect. Traffic along the highway slowed as drivers turned their heads. This was not chaos. This was presence. Marcus stepped outside, shoulders squared but relaxed. He did not flinch. He did not puff his chest. He simply waited. The engines cut one by one until silence settled over the lot. Ryder removed his helmet and gave a slight nod. We had a meeting last night, he said clearly enough for the others to hear. Topic was maintenance contracts, where we take our machines when they matter most. One of the older riders, a man with silver in his beard and scars across his knuckles, stepped forward. We do not chase drama. We chase reliability. Word is you are reliable. Marcus looked from face to face. What you heard is true, he said evenly. I fix what is broken. I do not overcharge. And I stand behind my work. Ryder reached into his vest and pulled out a folded document. A formal service agreement. 12 motorcycles under standard maintenance, effective immediately. Routine inspections every 60 days. Emergency priority if needed. Linda, who had stepped out of the small office after hearing the engines, watched quietly as Marcus took the paper and read through it carefully. No hidden terms. No traps. Just business. Marcus nodded once and extended his hand. You will get the same treatment every customer gets. Respect. Fair pricing. Honest work. The silver-bearded rider smiled faintly. That is why we are here. As the group began rolling their bikes toward the bays, engines restarting one by one, word traveled quickly through town. Within an hour, photos were circulating on local social media pages. A full chapter parked outside Reed Performance Garage. Some commented with curiosity, others with skepticism. Across town, Dean stood behind the counter at Callaway Auto Repair staring at his phone, jaw tightening as image after image appeared on the screen. Someone in his waiting area muttered, "Looks like they found a new place." Dean set the phone down harder than necessary. Back at the warehouse, the sound of tools clicking against chrome filled the air. Marcus moved with calm precision between the motorcycles, explaining maintenance intervals, checking torque specifications, adjusting timing where needed. There was no showmanship, no attempt to impress, just competence. As the afternoon light shifted across the concrete floor, Ryder leaned against a workbench and observed the steady rhythm of the shop. "You did not just open a garage," he said quietly to Marcus. "You shifted something." Marcus tightened the final bolt on a primary cover and stepped back. "I did not shift anything," he replied. "I just stopped shrinking." Outside, another truck pulled into the lot. Then another. Not bikers this time. Local drivers. Curious. Watching. And choosing where to place their trust. By the end of the second week, Reed Performance Garage no longer felt like a risk. It felt like momentum. The appointment board in the small glass office was filled from Monday through Saturday, names written in neat black marker under scheduled time slots. Local riders who had once driven past the industrial strip without noticing it now pulled into the lot with quiet curiosity. Pickup trucks lined the fence beside polished motorcycles. Word of mouth carried faster than any advertisement Marcus could have afforded. Inside the shop, the rhythm was steady and deliberate. Engines lifted. Diagnostics explained clearly. Invoices printed with transparent breakdowns of labor and parts. Linda managed the front desk with calm confidence, greeting each customer by name when possible. Caleb helped on weekends, sweeping floors and organizing tools, absorbing the work ethic without pressure or spectacle. Across town, Callaway Auto Repair struggled to understand the shift. The waiting room that once buzzed with routine traffic sat half empty on a Thursday afternoon. Dean stood at the counter flipping through invoices, noticing the decline in repeat service. A longtime customer approached him carefully. "I tried that new place north of here," the man said. "Reed Performance Garage. Clean work. Fair price." Explained everything. Dean forced a tight smile. "We have always done that here." The customer hesitated. "Not quite like that." The comment lingered long after the door closed behind him. Back at Reed Performance Garage, a black pickup truck rolled into the lot just before closing. Marcus recognized it immediately. Dean stepped out slowly, glancing at the line of motorcycles parked along the side of the building. No crowd today. No spectacle. Just steady work happening behind wide-open bay doors. Marcus wiped his hands and walked out to meet him. Dean looked older than he had 2 weeks earlier, tension etched into his features. "You built this fast," he said flatly. Marcus shrugged lightly. "It was already here. Just needed purpose." Dean shifted his weight. "You took half my customer base in 10 days. Marcus met his eyes calmly. "I did not take anyone. They chose." Silence stretched between them. The hum of an engine being tuned inside filled the background like a quiet heartbeat. Dean looked around once more at the organized bays, the clean signage, the steady flow of vehicles. "I misjudged you," he said finally, though the words sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Marcus did not gloat. He did not raise his voice. "I never wanted to compete," he replied. "I wanted to work." Dean nodded once, tight and reluctant. "Well, you are working now." He turned toward his truck, but paused before opening the door. "Those bikers. They bring attention. Be careful." Marcus allowed a faint smile. "I am careful with engines. And with people." Dean gave a small nod and drove away. As his truck disappeared down the road, Marcus stood for a moment in the fading evening light. What had begun as dismissal had turned into distance. And that distance had given him space to build something solid. Inside the garage, the final motorcycle engine settled into a smooth idle, steady and confident. The sound echoed across the concrete floor like a quiet declaration that the shift was complete. 6 months passed faster than Marcus ever expected. What began as an empty warehouse filled with dust and doubt had transformed into a fully operating shop with steady revenue, loyal customers, and a reputation that carried weight across the county. The sign above the entrance, Reed Performance Garage, no longer looked new. It looked established. Inside, the bays were rarely empty. 2 additional lifts had been installed, paid for entirely from shop earnings. Marcus hired one technician, a young veteran named Luis who valued precision over speed. He hired him not because he needed cheap labor, but because he recognized skill and refused to overlook it the way he once had been overlooked. The 6-month mark arrived on a quiet Monday morning. Marcus met Ryder in the small office where sunlight filtered through clean glass panels. A folder sat on the desk containing lease transfer paperwork. "You kept your word," Ryder said, reviewing the financial statements Marcus had prepared. "Strong margins. No shortcuts. No hidden fees." Marcus nodded. "I told you I would do it right." Ryder closed the folder and extended his hand across the desk. "Then it is yours. Officially." Marcus signed the final page with steady hands. No ceremony. No applause. Just ink on paper marking the moment when risk became ownership. That afternoon, a familiar pickup truck rolled into the lot once again. Dean stepped out slowly, but this time there was no calculation in his eyes. Only something quieter. He walked into the shop, glancing around at the steady rhythm of work, the organized tool stations, the customers waiting calmly in clean chairs. "You built something solid," he said. Marcus wiped his hands and faced him. "I built what I always wanted to build." Dean nodded once. "Callaway Auto Repair closed last week. Could not keep up." Marcus did not smile. He did not take satisfaction in the news. "I never wanted you to fail," he said honestly. "I just needed room to stand." Dean looked at him for a long moment. "I should have given you that room." He extended his hand. Marcus shook it. The gesture was simple, but it carried weight. Some lessons cost more than pride. When Dean left, Ryder stepped beside Marcus near the open bay doors. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the concrete, engines humming softly inside. "You did not just fix a motorcycle that day," Ryder said. "You changed the direction of your life." Marcus watched as Caleb swept the far corner of the shop, moving with quiet focus, learning without being pushed aside. "No," Marcus replied calmly. "I stopped letting someone else decide my direction." Outside, a new customer pulled into the lot, stepping out with curiosity and trust in equal measure. The sound of tools clicking against metal continued, steady and confident. Marcus looked around at the space that now belonged to him and understood something clearly. Being fired had not been the end of his story. It had been the door that finally opened. And what happened next had not shocked everyone because of revenge or noise. It shocked them because a man who was underestimated chose to rise, not with anger, but with excellence.